Dressage for Kids Training for Teaching program. The program started because many of you that teach are probably like me, that you teach because we wrote fairly well and didn't know anything about teaching. So the program was developed to try to educate people about how to teach. Not so much what to teach, not so much writing theory, but how to teach. And we're going to try to follow that to one degree or another tonight. But I have a couple of things to say. First, I'll try to be really quick. This is Dressage for Kids' 28th year. Wow. In 1998 at the USDF convention, I went to Fern Feldman and I said, I have an idea. And she made the huge mistake of saying she thought it was a good idea. Because since then, she's been right beside me and doing all of this and is the vice president of Dressage for Kids and does all of the yucky stuff that I want to have nothing to do with, the paperwork and the accountants and all of that. Yay, Fern! We started with a little show up in Connecticut, and now we've expanded to having 10 different programs, from starting them at lead line to lessons to volunteering to business education for those that have kind of graduated out. And there is a flyer on the table if anybody wants to learn more, or our website. We do have kind of a lot going on. But if you would just bear with me for a moment before we get into the program. Well, first of all, we'd be nowhere without our various volunteers that do everything from, I mean, many of you, so many people I see in here have already volunteered for us in some way, whether it's letting us use their stables for a clinic or teaching or speakers, and all the many different, everything we do has to have an educational, it's not just competition, but an educational part of it. So we have drawn lots of people for speaking, lecturing, teachers of our kids, and and also, of course, we'd be nowhere without some very, very generous sponsors who make it possible, for example, for us not to charge you to come and gorge and drink and hopefully have a nice educational evening. And so we're very appreciative to those at whatever level. I mean, from the kid that makes, she's done this 2 years, makes little rubber band bracelets and then can send us about $5 that she's raised. And so whatever level, excuse me, that it is at. And every year we give an award to, it's a heavy one, to someone that's been part of Dressage for Kids that is an outstanding volunteer for us. I think it was about 16 years ago, a little 6-year-old did her first D4K activity, and Mom had no idea what she was doing. Little did she know. So from various volunteering for us, now on our board, and we know her as our organizer extraordinaire because she's the one that got everything done for tonight. So let me read just briefly. This award is in honor of my mother, who was a volunteer extraordinaire. It's brilliant. This is the Corinne F. Gray Award in honor of a woman dedicated to helping children and adults alike enjoy all aspects of horse care, competition, and companionship. She was a truly remarkable woman. So, Chris Holleran, would you come forward? help to get this particular program this evening started. There's Tony Page here from Still Point Farm who sponsored the first one. We are so grateful to the people that step up at whatever level to help us out. Okay, let's move on. Now, one bit of bad news. We ordered all of this, and Chris had everything planned, and we're supposed to have 5 microphones, and we have 1. So we'll be passing it back and forth, or using our teaching voices, or whatever. So again, the Training for Teaching program is geared towards not writing theory per se, but more about exactly how to teach and help our students. And of course, help our horses to understand what we're trying to say to them. When you signed up, those of you that registered in advance, thank you for doing that. We asked if anyone had questions. A lot of the questions that were sent in didn't quite fit to the subject for this, but might fit to the subject of something else. And tonight it's going to be kind of random. Questions that we originally sort of thought about, and I'll also put in a few from you all. But I know when I go to a clinic myself, having been doing this kind of a long time, I'm really interested in seeing, ooh, that's a neat exercise they have for this particular problem. Or, oh, I love that phrase, I'm going to steal that phrase. Anything that I can find after so many years of teaching that's a little different. And I hope that's what we'll come back from tonight. So I'm going to be giving some various situations, and maybe they'll suggest some various situations. And what would you do? And they won't all answer. I told them they can answer if they want, or they don't have to say anything. If they can just sit here silently all evening. Somehow I think, well, that's probably not going to happen. But let's start with a hard one, because I bet a lot of you deal with it. Do you have some particular exercises? Not just what we know what we have to have before we ask, but developing it. But if we have a horse with a nice confirmed late flying change, I wanted to start with these ones.
I'll go ahead and fall on the sword as tribute. That's a really common issue, and I think when I think about training, at least for myself, when I start teaching horses flying changes, I have to have at least 5 things in order before I even try to do a flying change. Okay, so I have to be able to ride very good canter walk, walk canter, simple changes, so the horse is straight and easy to put into the new outside rein. They don't come off the bits, they're not crooked, and they're not anxious about it. I have to ride easy forward and back in the canter, so lengthen and shorten the steps, and in my world that means 3 strides forward, 3 strides back. And also to be able to do that easily in counter canter, that's important to me too. I have to be able to leg yield my horse off the wall to either, usually for me, I have to feel like I can go across the whole arena, but let's, for example, say from the long side, I have to be able to leg yield to the quarter line and put it into the new outside rein easily and change the positioning. And sort of once I have then I have to be able to ride counter very easily. And when I say easily, I mean that the horse's head is in the middle of its chest, and it's not flexed off to one direction because you're trying to save the lead and they're off balance. So I put all those things in order, and then I'll start approaching a flying change in a couple different ways. But when I have something that's late behind and I've done all of my homework, I get really fixated on, what I do is I will literally tell the horse, I'll ask the horse not to change in front. So I'll literally take the shoulders out and almost lock them in the rein and think to myself, I'm just going to kick your hind legs over until you jump behind. And once they understand that, then I think it's not so hard to fix the front end and put together. Would any of you like to add? Oh.
I mean, the checklist is great. I think that is really clear on setting it all up. And I think one thing that I find often with people that are struggling with a late change is they get so hung up on the moment of the change and whether it happened or not, and then they kind of abandon ship afterwards. So sometimes I've had good luck saying, forget about what happens in the moment of the change, and really, really I want you to pick on what happens after the change and immediately after the change, and they can kind of get that build-up and anxiety of the change moment out of their head. Oftentimes you've lost the straightness, you've lost the impulsion, the stride is suddenly 3 times bigger than before you asked for the change. So sometimes I kind of do a backwards approach and telling them to forget about the moment of the change, and I want you to ride the perfect canter as quickly as you can after the change. That's be able to break that cycle in a few.
Oh, I guess we skipped the introduction part, like the introduction. I'm from Germany. I don't know if everyone knows me.
One thing I told them they had to do, in the very beginning, they were introducing themselves. And to tell us
Are we getting that also at the end, if you like?
to tell us very quickly how they became teachers. We know they all ride good, right?
But yeah, let's finish that topic maybe.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I agree with everything what you guys said. For me, it's always the question: why is the horse late and behind? And I mean, flying changes has a lot to do with balance, and so it's kind of the comfort zone for that horse in that moment to change late. So it's kind of the balance the horse has, especially when they do it a lot. So you ask for the change and they change late all the time. So it's kind of their balance. So I always say, let's try to change that balance into a different one, that it is possible to get the hind leg more activated, that this will not happen. And so that's one idea, to question that. And what I see a lot, the reason why horses are late behind is also when we have, when we're, doesn't matter where it is, can be on the diagonal or on the long side, it's like, is the horse really straight in front of our aids? And what I feel a lot also of myself with a young horse teaching the flying change, that they often try to push the rib cage a little to the inside, waiting for the change, make themselves crooked, that inside hind leg comes a little too much in, and you have already the horse leaning on your inside leg. But you want to have the horse straight, you want to have it off the inside leg. So what you can do, for example, if it doesn't really work out on the diagonal, maybe to go into counter canter, maybe even from trot, not asking the counter canter out of the corner or diagonal where the horse is waiting again. What I like to do is trot through the corner, go into counter canter on the long side where the horse is balanced, and then you have to take care that that horse gets off the inside leg with a little counter flexion. Maybe you want to do a change to the right, for example, you're on counter canter left or left lead canter, and you get the horse off the inside leg, counter flexing it a little bit. Make really sure the horse goes to the bit in the straight first, nearly pushing that inside hind leg a little to the outside. And then in the moment you give the gate, it's often easier for the horse to follow behind.
I have one other quick little thing to add, because I think we all learn by messing up a lot. And so something that I've found useful by messing up a lot on my way is that I now try to never do the changes on the diagonal until I can get them at other random places, so that we don't give them anxiety on where they're going to end up having to do it mostly in the test. Same way I try to never pee off my horses where they're going to do it in the test until they can do it everywhere else in the arena.
I have one thing I would add to all of this, which I think is correct, but at the end of the day, when a horse is consistently late behind in the changes, I think it's the canter. And I like to then create what I call a little bit, everything off the new, like Christoph says, a little bit off the new inside and so on. But you have to kind of create a canter where I call, you have to create a little positive tension behind. So you can't just canter this nice canter, where you, oh, this feels really good, let me give a signal, and oh, shit, it was late again. You know, so you have to kind of create that canter where you create that little tension I call it positive tension behind. Because then you are much more likely with everything they said, but then get a clean change. Instead of you want everything perfect and it didn't happen, I try again, it didn't happen. But if you have that little grippy kind of little tension behind, you're much more likely to get them through behind.
Okay, we're gonna pretend we're just starting. Please, everybody. Take this one we can come here, and I would like them to each tell you a little tiny bit about how they became riding instructors.
Okay.
What's your name?
Lars Petersen. And I can take a little bit over that. So I got into dressage through my dad. He rode both dressage, jumping, 3-day, everything. So that's a little bit how I got into horses. His best friend's father was a big breeder that bred Holsteiner horses. So when I was 13 years old, I got my first horse and started riding and helping and breaking horses. And we should not use that word anymore, breaking horses. That sounds bad. We should call it starting horses. And then in Denmark we have an education it's actually under the agriculture. How do you say that? Agriculture. So it's if you take a 3-year education, you will become a trainer, and if it's 6 years, you become a rider. Germany has the same, a little bit with different states in Germany, but it's more or less the same. So that's how I got introduced to riding. I went through that system.
How old were you when you started the 3-year program?
I was 17. Yeah, I think when I started the program, yeah.
And were you a dressage rider?
No, I did everything. I did dressage, jumping, everything. We had to do everything, actually. That was just how it was, yeah. So, and I don't regret it. I love jumping. I don't think I was very good at it. Maybe that's why I wrote dressage. I don't know if I'm good at that either, but anyway, that's how it is. But that's how I got into it.
My name is Allie Brock. I think that if I think about how I started teaching, it was probably pretty early for me, and I'm not going to go as in deep. I'm from Hawaii originally. I started riding when I was 7 years old. I think I joined Pony Club when I was 9. Sounds about right to everybody. And I think I started teaching through Pony Club pretty early. Like, I'd say they had me by 13, 14 doing stuff with the younger kids. And then I, took the path of working student. I left Hawaii at 17, was a working student, hopped a couple places, and, ended up being a working student for Sue Blanks in 2001, and kind of the rest is history from that. But I think I've been teaching pretty much all along since that point. And unlike Lars, I have no certification. I have been pushed through a couple coaching programs for the US. We've done one pilot program for USCF, and then I was also sent through a thing called Coaching Accelerator Program for the USOPC a few years ago. And I think, I can't speak too out of term here, but I do see instructor certification coming for those of us operating soon, and I will leave it at that.
I kind of got into it actually a very similar way that Allie did. I started out just riding Western and growing up on a farm, and then I was introduced to dressage through the United States Pony Club. And I think that is an amazing foundation, and from a very young age, once we got our D2 certification, we were teaching the D1, so you were kind of introduced to teaching younger children really early on, and I found that I just fell in love with that part as well.
That was quick. grew up for sure with horses too. I have a very famous father. He was at 10 Olympic Games as a coach with 6 different teams, I think. So it was kind of like as a boy, I for sure wanted to do different sports, but at the end, I ended up with dressage too, first jumping, then dressage. But I was lucky to go through all the levels with a lot of different coaches, starting with the ponies, juniors, young riders, U25, senior teams later on for Germany. And so my father took very good care, and I'm very thankful that he pushed me into that early with the coaching, because as riders sometimes we forget to give something back. And it was always about that the knowledge we get through our coaches, it's really, even if you're still competing, and I was for sure starting at a young age to be a good coach too. My father really took care of that while I was riding on teams. But it's really important, I think we all agree, it's very important to share the knowledge, what we got from our good coaches, that this goes on. Because we have a lot of good riders out there, but they're not all sharing their knowledge. So I think that is very important. Thanks for having us tonight.
We have
One very sad microphone.
a question that came from someone who signed up, and they talk about back in the day, some of us that day was a long time ago, we rode somewhat unconventional horses, and conformation might have been less ideal, and maybe temperament was also less ideal than what we have today, thanks to selective breeding. In what way has your training changed, or has it, due to the fact that we're now riding horses that really are being bred and designed for dressage? Has it changed?
I think it has changed, because I remember when I was, don't let the hair fool you, when I was young, we could be a whole winter on a 20-meter circle to just get the horse through. You know, that was a struggle. So, and then you developed it up from there. Nowadays, it's the horses are much more bred to be athletes, and it's almost like some horses. I taught a blue horse for many years, and I had so good horses that it's almost like, now I'm saying it that way, if you pull a little bit and kick a little bit, they go passage. It's kind of scary a little bit, but what I think, what people forget with these talented horses is to do the basic works, because they are bred to do all the fancy movements pretty easy. And if we don't do the basic work and make the horses strong, what do you think happens? You get a tendon. They pull a tendon here, they pull a tendon there. So I think the riding has changed in a way, but I think it's really, really important to think about the old basics where we make our horses strong, because just because they have big movements and big gaits, you know, and as a young horse, they just can't carry it, because it's the muscles that carries it. And if we don't build up muscles, they carry it in tendons, and then the chain breaks at some point. So I think the riding has changed, but how should I say it? I still think the old basic work is super, super important.
What he said. I also, just to add to it, like, I will say, growing up in Hawaii, we almost didn't have any warm bloods. They were not what I grew up riding on. And I can still remember getting to the mainland and sitting on them and going, this is a lot of work. You know, because I rode thoroughbreds and appendix quarter horses and a lot of half Arabs and just lighter breeds that were sensitive, and I was like, God, these warblers are just dull. But I think that when we have these super moving horses that are so easy and so talented, it is very easy to do things, but if they don't have the infrastructure to do said things, they will break down and quickly. And they are athletes, but they're so much lighter type now too that, you know, you have to pay attention to their feet and their bones, and, you know, are they so loose that they're almost too weak when they move so freakishly and stuff. So the basics are pretty much everything.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, and those are excellent points, and I think you have to remember that just maybe they're come out moving and looking like a third level FEI horse, but they have zero of the education. So even if their body appears to be educated, that their brains have not. So in addition to building up the strength, that you really take the time to build up their brains, because you might have done this 50 times over, but they've never done it before.
Yeah, I think the breeding really has changed, that's true. And we have totally different horses now. Even when I was young, it was a totally different time. And now we have all these super athletes and big moving horses. And still a lot of breeders are not always thinking Grand Prix. You know, it's like coming from Germany, we have so many, I mean, good young upcoming horses there, but we also question where are they later? Because we have the German championships of young horses, and later on the world championships, like you guys have too. But with so many horses, because our breeding is so big. But also then, you don't see so many of them later on well trained in the Grand Prix or even on Prix St. George level. And totally agree with what you guys said. It's like take care of the body and look at the conformation of your horse. And if it takes a little bit longer to build up the horse, build up the muscles, that's fine. I mean, they have to grow into it, and they're totally different looking nowadays than the days before, and which is great in a way, but it doesn't always make it easier when they are so light-footed and the body looks for sure like nice. But as Adrienne said, also the mental side, they are much kind of what we call as professionals maybe sharper to the leg, which also for some exercises for sure it makes it easier. But we have to take care of the mental side too, that they really make it through the levels. And yeah, for sure it's a dream always to make a Grand Prix horse, but it's a long way, and we have to be careful. And only because they offer it, it doesn't mean we have to be quicker than before. Because I think last, when we go back in the days, we didn't have so many top ones in the top sport at that time. Okay, there were some. But that was not in general that you had 8, 9-year-old horses in top Grand Prix sport, like in top Grand Prix sport. And now maybe there are more good horses out there, and they offer a lot, but that doesn't mean we have to be like quicker than before. We really should take our time.
They're talking about back in the day, which is about the time I was retiring from riding. But also, Allie talked about the dull horses. We call them the dumb bloods. As I travel around the country teaching, and I'm teaching much more lower level than most of you, but I'm wondering if you also have some phrases or whatever, because to me, the lesson I'm teaching the most is the lesson of the leg. Put your leg on, horsey goes. I say goes, Petersen says, yes ma'am. Do you have any quick little thoughts on how to get a rider to get his horse in front of the leg? Anybody?
Just kick it out. That was the joke. Well, kind of. No, I grew up with the old German riding that, so 80% seat, 15% leg, 5% hand. So, if I can tell you, if a horse is really, well, maybe not all the time, but most of the time, if a horse is dull of the leg, I can almost tell you don't have him good on your seat. I think getting your horse good on your seat, then they react way better to your leg. I'm not so sure how I can explain that how you do that, but I agree. It's good off the leg is of course good, but collection comes from your core and your seat and your lower back. That's what makes the croup come down. But then they should still be in front of your leg. So I don't know if it's only your leg. No, I do know that it's not only your leg, but it's the better we can get our horses on our seat and our points. What is that? The lower back, or what do you call that? The better they move off your leg also. So it's not just kicking.
I feel like I spend a lot of time talking to people, even really top people, about their seat and about how to use their pelvis and how to use their core and the half halt properly, and that they're not tight when they don't stop their pelvis when they put their leg on. It's like putting the handbrake on your car and pushing on the accelerator and thinking it's going to move. It'll move a little, but probably pretty badly. And I think about that a lot. And I teach a lot about a driving leg aid. In my world, more leg means go faster. And I'm not talking about kicking. I'm saying if I put more pressure, that horse should accelerate. And so you can get them sensitive, so it's almost like a volume switch there. And I don't kick a whole lot. I use that really, really correctively as, like I said, move right now. But I really think about educating horses to what a leg aid means, and not assuming that because I put more leg on, they know that means to go more forward. So that's a little bit like my thought behind that.
And then kind of keeping with that too, just if you want to kind of get a little bit out of just, God, squeezing, nothing's happening, take it to something different, like go to some groundwork. Do they actually move away from pressure on the ground? And a lot of times you'll find they don't. So if they don't understand to move away from pressure without a rider, they're certainly not going to understand to move away from pressure when the rider's on. So kind of peel back that onion and see where really is this misunderstanding starting.
The good things are always said already. It's a little definitely. What I like, the question is always, why is the horse not in front of the leg, and the understanding of the horse, what should happen that the horse gets more in front of us. And for sure, we have horses maybe a little bit on the lazy side. We want to bring them more in front of the leg, but the question is, what do we do then? And what does the horse needs to understand? So the horse needs to push more to the bit and push us or take us forward and to the leg aid. And the understanding and what I like to do is, even with a lazy horse where you would think, oh, I have to chase it forward, and then at some point it's in front of the leg. Normally it's the total opposite. So the more you go forward with the lazy horse, the less it would be in front of you. What always helps is transitions, all sorts of transitions. Even if it's a little hard in the beginning, do canter, trot, canter transitions, and ask a little bit with the leg, like little clicks instead of a big one. Do a lot of little ones and make the horse sensitive and listening to you, and then try to get the horse pushing more and forget a little bit about the collecting hind leg at that moment, more to a pushing hind leg, and then in the transition back, it's the other way around, and the horse kind of comes to a stage where it's kind of self-going at a certain point, the more transitions you do, and it doesn't matter if it's trot, walk, trot, canter, trot, canter. Later on, maybe canter, walk, that's a little bit too much collection, but also then the next level then, but it's like riding on a circle, transitions, that always helps.
Christoph, you keep it. They'll hear my teaching voice. Wait, one of the movements I find that I see done the worst most often at the bad grammar, rein back. Talk to us a little bit about whether we have a horse that just doesn't want to back up, or what I run into every so often, the horse that backs lateral.
Yeah, very difficult topic. Again, I always ask questions first. Why doesn't want the horse to rein back. And for me, when I think about young horses, but you can also do it with older horses for sure. For me, it's always easier when someone is on the ground helping me, make the horse understand, because when you have them in hand, like walking them around in the stable, and you make them sometimes backing up and go backwards, they're pretty listening and pretty good with that, because they learn it from a young age on, even as a foal when you have the halter on. And so why is that possible? And then suddenly they don't want to do rein back with the rider on top. And that's for sure often a thoroughness issue, contact issue, and for sure there are a lot of exercises you can do, and my colleagues will explain that. But something what really helps to get the stress out instead of just pulling on the reins and make the horse kind of understand. I think it's very important to do it because it's a very sensitive thing to train the rein back, and a lot of things can happen that maybe the horse understands it wrong and maybe goes up or whatever. So they have no fear in that moment. So someone on the ground who can help, like taking the rein and do the same thing what they would do without a rider.
I think one of the things that I like to check in on when I'm teaching the rein back, or if you have one that has anxiety about it, is that you make sure you can first get all parts of their body to move independently, so that I can displace the shoulders, I can displace the haunches, I can ride, like one of my favorite exercises, ride forward into like a big walk pirouette right, directly into a walk pirouette left, directly into a shoulder and right, so they're really kind of being able to move everywhere there, and then I'll stop, throw in a step or two of rein back. And I also like to work the rein back, being able to rein back and turn at the same time. That's not necessarily a dressage thing, but that's kind of the way we used to start the babies, and I find that's helpful, that it is as in control for the horse, just as if you were walking forward, it's non-stop, fly backwards. You still have control of their balance, you still have control of their feet, and you can move their body as you go back, and they start to think of it more as an exercise and not just something that they need to run back, get over with, and then run forward again.
I make sure that everything backs up easily on the ground, and when I mean that I can back it up straight, I can turn it, I can control one step, halt it, move it forward, back it up 2 steps, move it around both sides, because I have ridden cold-backed horses, and that's been a way that I'm still alive, is that by checking it up, by backing it up before I get on it, because if they are cold, oftentimes they'll hump up, and you'll know you're going to have a big problem. But so I'm very careful about teaching my horses that stuff on the ground, and then I don't pull on horses to back up. I don't believe in it. I really teach mine to take a really subtle rein aid cue, and I expect to be able to move one diagonal pair at a time and be able to stop or move forward or whatever. And I've had good luck when I've had horses that have been lateral in the rein back of asking for one step, and if they go, putting them out in the middle of the arena. If they go to move laterally, interrupting them in the middle and just asking for one step of turn on the forehand so that they yield over and break the foot pattern, and then repeat it and break the foot pattern. And oftentimes they'll suddenly come up with the correct diagonal pair that you can reward. So, but I don't want any stress around it. I don't want them worried about it. I want them to feel comfortable with me influencing them, and that means step by step.
I agree with everything, especially also what Adrienne said, moving them on the bended line if they don't want to go back. Or what we can tell us when we are training horses at home and they don't want to go back. We can just tell each other that, okay, the horse is either not through the back or there's something or these. It's not just teaching them. I really believe it's that when a horse don't want to go back, it's either they're tight in the back, sore in the back. There's something, because a backwards thing is they actually have to really sit and crunch under up in the rotator. But anyway, I agree with everything.
Okay, let's move up the levels a little. We take a canter pirouette where the horse spins.
Okay, so I have to start a little bit from the beginning, because when we start training horses, all horses are left-handed and right-handed, just like we are. They have you can call it a heavy rein, and they have a hollow rein. So the basics, when we start horses, our job is to try to soften. So, okay, I'll try to soften a little bit the harder rein and make them connect on the hollow rein. So if a horse, let's say, is a little tough on the right rein, most likely the left hind is the weak corner. So in the basics of riding, that is what we have to already determine when the horse is young and try to make that stronger. So now we can fast forward to a period. So a lot of people would probably think that because everybody knows inside leg, outside rein, then we can make a living. But if you have a really hollow left rein and a strong right rein, I can tell you your horse is way more likely to spin in your left period than in the right one. So I think when you see these, and I teach a lot, when you have these, when the horse gets quick in one period, it's now I'm saying it that way, it's on, let's say it's the left period, it's almost like you want to block a little bit the inside shoulder so he's not falling over. So that would be almost like riding more in front of your inside aids to your inside rein to make him not fall over. And that sounds really wrong because everybody talks about the outside rein, but it's really, that is basically almost the only way you can that I know of. Maybe I can learn something. But this with the hollow and the hard, like they're left-handed and right-handed, all horses are the same. There's written a really good Swedish article by someone about that with horses, and he talks about basics. It's literally like you take the rider off the horse, and now you ask that rider to write his name just as nice with your left hand and the right hand, or kick a ball with your right leg and your left leg, or whatever you have to do it just as good with both legs or hands. We all know if we go to the gym, that we are stronger in one leg and more flexible to the other side, and blah blah. The horses are the same. So that is the basic work that we have to do with young horses to make them even. And I think when people think about that a horse should go to both reins. Outside rein, if you go a mile down the street here, your horse should go to both reins. When you turn a mile out to the left or the right, maybe you have an outside rein, but they should still go to both reins. And I think when you can train that, you avoid all of that stuff that they throw themselves to. And this is really hard anyway, but it's difficult. But I think that is probably the biggest reason why you often go to the horse show and you see a horse make a movement good to the one side, not so good to the other side.
How am I going to top that? I'm going to add to it.
Good.
Okay. So, what Lars said, yes. And I actually ride a lot inside leg to my inside rein in flexion. I think about diagonal aids a lot, inside leg, outside rein. Outside leg, inside rein. You're still riding both sides of the horse, and you do have to ride to two reins. But I often see horses spin in pirouettes because they get too straight and they fall to the inside and they lose balance. And I really approach pirouettes as a turning exercise in shoulder four, that they're really looking where they're going, and I expect them that I can come in and they are wrapped around my inside leg, and that can mean that I'm allowing the turn, or if I say, and now you go straight forward in shoulder four right now, they go straight forward in shoulder four right now, but I don't make them straighten the neck and let them fall to the inside. when that inside hind leg falls to the inside and they get straight, they have no choice. They're out of balance. They're going to fall and they're going to spin. So I'm really careful about that in the training for my own horses. And I don't let them turn on their own accord. I will absolutely stop them if they try to straighten and jump over. I'll interrupt it. And so it becomes very clear that you only do what I say when I say to do it. And whether I am so horrible. But then it's very clear. And that it's easy for me to come in, either ride 2 strides straight ahead, turn 2 steps, forward 2 steps, whatever, that they're completely available like that. And I think that, the other thing I talk about a lot is that the outside rein belongs to the outside front leg and the inside rein belongs to the inside front leg. And I know we get a lot obsessed with having no contact or the horse is light on the inside rein, but then you're not helping them a whole lot. It's directional. So I think when you ride Grand Prix, you really do finally understand that they have to be as even as possible to both reins. That way you have full possibility to control the bend and flexion and direction. And if they're empty on one and heavy on the other, it's really hard to do.
I think one thing that you actually taught me, or a way of thinking about something, like Adrienne was saying, is that if they're dropping that inside shoulder on you, it's easy to kind of be thinking, get up, the inside shoulder. Well, the opposite, or another way of thinking that would be to get the weight down on the outside front leg. And for me, that was a really helpful, just kind of different way of thinking about it. Rather than trying to stop them from falling on the inside shoulder, try to get them to put the weight down onto the outside shoulder. Another thing I would say, I think you see a lot of spinning pirouettes at Free St. George, probably more than any level, I believe. And I think that is a lot due to the fact of just the canter they're coming in with. The canter is way too big. It is not the stride length that they need to do the pirouette in. And I always want to make sure I can have the stride length that I want to turn my little slices of the pie. I can maintain that for as long as I want. 10 meters, 15 meters. I can take my leg off. I can change the flexion ever so slightly both directions, knowing that canter stride is going to stay the same. And to have that, then I think you're much more likely to not just try to come in and hope that speed carries you through the turn and then you can get out in time to whip around that corner and get your change. So I think a ton of just making sure, is the canter really honest? Is it standing up on its own? Can you take your aids away and the horse is just revolving underneath you? And if you can't, what aid are you having to clamp on? And try to fix that before you even get to the turning.
Yeah, that was a lot of theory, and I think very good. It explains it very well. To describe a little trick, what I like to do is horses like to lean on something, especially in the periods. Sometimes it's good, and I like to do that, and then you guys could do the same with your coach. Just like do canter around your coach on a small circle first, and start with a little traviata, then the horse should bend around the inside leg. You have to get the flexion. And when a person is standing there, the horse will not jump on the person and try to spin. It's it's very interesting. You look into the horse's eye in that moment and they stop spinning. They take care of that person. And it's somehow so much easier suddenly to get the correct bending around the inside leg, to open, to separate the hind legs a little better, because that's what we want. We want to turn on the hind leg and we want to separate them a little bit, that it is possible that that outside hind leg is not spinning to the outside. So it's really a good trick to put a person in the middle and just school it a bit. It doesn't need to be super small always, but you will feel a difference. And second thing, talking about leaning on something, is what I like to tell my students is when you go, for example, on a diagonal for a half period, ride it a little bit closer to the track. Don't cheat a little bit with the diagonal. Stay a little closer to the track, and suddenly the horse sees the wall. But for sure you turn to the other direction, but still the horse, for me, feels more comfortable kind of leaning a little bit on the wall and will spin less to the inside suddenly. That's kind of the trick, where you start with quarter periods doing the same thing on the track. It's a lot of, what you need is a lot of confidence. For sure balance in a period, but also a lot of confidence from the horse.
While we're on the subject of pirouettes, how about sticking in a
mean, that, you know, if they, so you mean if they kind of just,
They pivot on a hind foot.
yeah. So I see a lot of people, they keep one walk pirouette, it was stuck. Then they go over here and it's stuck, and they go over here and it's stuck. And they keep doing walk pirouettes like for fucking ever. And I think instead of making one, so when they stick, often either they push to the outside or the inside, you know, against your leg a little bit. So I mean, it's really hard to say if they stick. There's many reasons why they could stick, but I think most often they should make the pirouette a little bit bigger, get them really in front of the leg, and really make them sometimes. So if, let's say they want to stick because they are against the outside, like they want to push out, yeah, then you make the walk pirouette bigger, but you push the hunches a little bit more in. If it's opposite, they want to fall in, you have to make them a little also bigger, but in front of your inside edge, so that they're not falling in. So there can be different reasons why they're sticking. But keep doing the same, like I want to make a perfect walk pirouette here. I think it's either they're not in front of you, or they push us against one of them, either to the inside or the outside. That's I think the most likely reason why they do that.
I teach walk pirouettes. I'm not really a big fan of turning the haunches because I think they're too straight and they just step to the inside with their inside legs, and we're never going to do it again after whatever second level or, so forget that. So, like, I think about walk pirouettes, and I really focus, again, if I'm doing one to the left, that the horse is in shoulder 4, and I'm very, very fixated on that they are upright for my inside leg, and that I want the outside leg to go over, and I want the inside leg to go forward, and the inside hind leg will go forward, not to the side. So I focus, before I ever make it tight, I focus on that it's correct in the front end, and that they're very balanced. And I might be going from outside aids to inside aids to outside aids every step, depending on what's happening. Then I tighten it up, and I feel like if I'm smart about that, and they know how to walk through themselves, they don't stick. I think they stick because they get out of alignment, and then we push on them harder, and they don't know where to go. So that's a little bit my feeling on that. And of course, there's one side they're going to be a little easier, and one side is going to be a little bit harder. But I think if you think about pushing horses in pirouettes too much, they're going to step to the inside with that inside hind leg, and in a way lose the bend from nose to tail, and not keep thinking to walk forward with that inside hind leg. So that's how I think about it.
It's really basically almost like a canter pirouette.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
And you should train
You
it
have
like
to
that.
walk up under, and you know, it's a straight turn. It's kind of the same.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking the same, that I school walk pirouettes a ton every day in my warm-up, and it's kind of exactly the same checklist I'm going through for my canter pirouettes, that I want to, at any point, be able to ride out in whatever direction that their ears are pointing, that I should be able very easily, if I'm making it small, to be able to ride out 3 steps, and then small, and then out 3 steps, and if you have them tuned into that system, and you get in the ring and you feel they're about to stick, you can just barely touch them with that inside leg. They think they're going to go out, they'll step forward and up under with that inside hind, which is the same thing I want in my canter pirouettes. I want to have very easy size control that I can stay in the same bend, same direction, and whatever direction is pointing right between their ears, I can very easily ride straight forward for 2 steps and then back to the turning.
Yeah, and sometimes I think we forget to just, like, we always make a big thing out of the walk pirouettes. You know, with some horses it's like, or a lot of riders think, oh, it's so difficult. And I think if the horse really follows the aids, like the inside, like outside, like everything what you guys said, it's sometimes really important to really just try to steer the horse around with that inside rein and really turn the shoulder around, because it happens often that this is the most of the times we see it with like more educated horses. They do it kind of slowing down, kind of travers pirouettes then, and then it's sometimes they have to for sure follow the outside leg. But it's also important to get the shoulder around, and sometimes it just helps if you move your inside hand. It's the same in the canter period. If you move your inside hand a little to the inside and just tell the horse, hey, turn with your shoulder with the forward tendency in it, normally the hind legs are just following in the right way. So we sometimes think too complicated to want to move the whole body and to get everything together. Sometimes it's very simple. You just like steer the horse around a little bit on the inside rail.
Or 2 or 3 times in every test. Square a ball.
I'm glad you have.
Square balls. Yeah, okay. For sure, I mean, we have that pretty much in a very young age already. Like it starts with the young horse classes, and for horses with big gaits, for sure it's not always so easy. But talking earlier about transitions, what I like to do is maybe starting with trot walk transitions, and then later on you approach the halt. For sure the horse needs to be straight, the contact is very important. You want to get the gait a little smaller with a lot of small half halts to at some point to get to the full stop. And for sure it's easier to maybe give the horse the chance to be on the wall first and can lean a little bit on the wall. And yeah, it's a bit like, I see it a bit like learning by doing, give the horse confidence, do a lot of transitions. This is something for sure we can do. We can train a little bit every day because it's also kind of a good fluid work. And then, yeah, for sure later on, when we talk about halts from the canter, first important is good canter walk transition for sure before you even think about halts, or you later on going on the center line. So you stay a little bit away, closer to the wall, maybe on the second track next level, or then quarter line. And yeah, it's important to get the horse sensitive to very small gaits before you come to the full stop.
Something I like to check in on all of mine first is that I can just explain to them with the whip in hand how to square up their hind legs. So if I'm walking with them on the rail, I halt with their front legs square. They understand the light touch of the whip to move up one hind leg, so that when you then get to the place in your riding where they halt and they're not square and you tap them, they understand where you tap them, trying to do it consistently the same as where you did it in hand. So they're like, oh, okay, this is a squaring up. She's not tapping me because I should trot forward. And you say, well, no, wrong answer. And then they're like, well, you tapped me, shouldn't I go forward? So I try to be very clear to explain to them the type of tap or a voice command, if it's a kiss, something, so that they're understanding this is not a pluck, it's not a go forward, it's not kick me with your legs to square up. And then the other thing that I always like to test is that I can just make whatever gait I've got a halt from, whether it's trot or canter, I can make it very small, very boring, I call it my Western pleasure canter or my Western pleasure trot, and they'll just sit there and wait and carry themselves. So I feel like I can kind of land, I would say, like a helicopter into the halt. And if you're starting to flex the canter, they're already braking, or you're already having to drive with a lot of leg, they're not going to be in the right balance for a halt. So I really work on the preparation, I guess, for the halt without letting them do the halt until I can kind of take my aids away and they at least stay in the preparation gait on their own before I try the actual halt.
Yeah, and to add to all of that, which is really good, I also too, I try to not pull on my horses when I halt. I try to really close them up from my seat and close my lower leg and add up to a halt so that they're not learning to brace against the rein. And also that they don't get too abrupt in it, that they're not in a way almost too obedient, so that if I need to walk forward 2 steps to square the front end up, the hind leg then follows. So it's a soft landing in balance.
I agree. No, the only thing I could add to that maybe was the whole concept of a transition or a half halt is, and to make a good halt is of course that your horse is really in front of you when you ride into it. That's basically what, that's a must.
Okay, you covered this a little bit, but I want you to see your new student who's coming in with their 5, 6-year-old horse, and their first comment to you is, he's so stiff to the right. What are you going to do with him?
So they all are left-handed and right-handed. Every horse has it to a degree or the other. And I really feel that's how I grew up learning from my first boss I had. That basics is about making them even. And again, it's about if they're really heavy on the right, they're probably really weak on the left. And so what exercises do we do to supple the right side, making them connect on the left side, getting that other hind leg strong, because you can't really pull it loose. Let's say they're really strong on the right and you just keep pulling on that rein till they at some point go, whoop. Yeah, so now maybe you have less on the right rein, but they're not connected behind. So that only works in maybe, I don't know what, intro level or some level, but you cannot pull them loose. And that is for me, still today, the hardest thing in dressage is making that evenness and making them really, even and so you can do shoulder in, rangewear, haunches in, forward, back, stepping over from the right to get the hollow side, and there's a ton of things it depends on how severe it is, but they all have it. And I think, like I said before, you see one movement good to the other. We all have it. So when we get better riders, we can compensate a little bit for the bad side. So hopefully the judges don't see it so much. But there's another aspect in it. That is how to make your horse last for a long time. Because the more your horse goes crooked, the more likely you are to pull a suspensory, or they go sore always at the same spot. So I think it's something that I know with my girls at home, I try to teach them how to work that. I struggle with it every day. I ride a lot of horses every day. It's freaking difficult. But I think that should be probably the most important thing that we train when we build our horses, because that is the foundation that we build the house on at the end of the day. That they last for a long time. You see a lot of horses come up young, and then we don't see them again. Something happens. I've done the same. I'm not about that, but it is something that should be a priority, I think, in our training, because that is the reason for the question why it is like that, and for me it's the most important.
Can I, just someone, yes, just to be very specific, because we have some lower level riders and young ones and so forth, you said this shoulder in and haunches in and whatever, if my horse is, as they say, stiff to the right.
Yeah. So let's say.
What specific exercise?
Yeah. So let's say he's really hard on the right rein, that you don't want to bend to the right. So then, of course, when you go down the long side, you could do shoulder in, you could do haunches in, everything you think you have to do on the right rein. So at the end of the day, that makes them defensive on that side also, because you're always fucking pulling on that side. So it's important to switch it from, let's say he's stiff on the right, you come to the right and you go shoulder in. Sometimes you then go into a little rangewear, because you need to make yourself use the left rein also. And then of course, when let's say you're going right and your horse is really stiff to the right, so you get a little bit of bending, you think, that was a little better. Maybe you go into a rangewear. So then when you go the rangewear, that's what we talked about before, then you would actually think inside to inside. So you would not supple the left rein. You would try to make him, come on, take my left rein. Push with the left rein. And then even though that becomes your outside, because that actually makes it better, because you get more weight on your outside rein when you switch the bending again. So it's a little it's hard, but it's, you can't just only work on the hard side, because then they also get defensive and they get sour. And so you have to make yourself do a little both. And when you bend to the hollow side, I like to think, to say, come on, take my, even if it's the inside, come on, take my inside. Take, so, yeah, that's
Yeah, and I'm just going to also build on, what Lars said about that. First off, if I have someone new come in too, I'll watch them I'll say, just ride like I'm not here, and let me take a look, because they might also be contributing to that crookedness and the fact that the horse is leaning so hard on the right rein. So I watch first, because it can also be very much a rider issue. But, from a training standpoint, when I have something that's so leaning on one side, I literally will take, if it's leaning on the right rein, I will ride them from my right leg to my left rein and half halt and give on that outside rein until they just go, because they have nothing to lean on until they're actually meeting the left rein. And then I start to have a different relationship with the right. And that can be not easy to do. I will ride off the track and just say to the horse, listen, I'm turning, but you're not allowed to sit on my outside rein. So, here's my leg, diagonal leg, go to my left rein. Don't fall through my left leg. Stand up. And until it actually becomes almost habit for them to not go leaning over there sitting on it. And I'll do that until I can do that in all the lateral work too, which, because I'm really against pushing and pulling at the same time. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in pushing this too hard. So it's about connecting the horse, right? But I'll take it to a real extreme where I'll just be like, I'm gonna half halt and then I'm gonna throw that rein at you. And if you run out that way, I'm gonna leg yield you over and you need to actually meet my left rein. So that's what I will do with horses that are doing stuff like that.
that stuff can take maybe a year. It sounds very easy, but it's not.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add from that. I think what Lars said was a very, very good point, that if they're strong on one side, they're usually because they're weak on the other. And I think just thinking about it that way and thinking of yourself a bit more as I'm your physical therapist, how can I help them get equally strong rather than coming in and it just awfully hangs in my right rein because he wants to be naughty or something. That just that mindset can change that a lot. And then one of my pet peeves also, especially with slightly older horses, is if they have a stiff side, to watch someone come in and immediately start going after the stiff side. Because if you've ever woken up with a stiff neck and you don't want to turn right, and someone comes up and cranks your head right, the last thing you are ever going to do is turn your head right. You're going to be like, no way, not going to happen. And so I think it's really important to let their bodies warm up, like Ali said, before you can go after that. Do everything you can to get them over to the rein they want to be too light on. Let their bodies make sure they're really warmed up before you ask them to do the shape that is hard for them.
Absolutely agree. It's really important to warm up the muscles first before you really go behind the problem. And agree with everything what you guys said.
I think what I just said before is actually, I do a lot of clinics around the country, and I think the understanding of the left-handedness and right-handedness and this, trying to make them even and not just think, oh, you stupid horse, you're pulling on my right rein or left or whatever it is. I think that is, I mean, that's also, I've ridden a lot, I've made a lot of horses. It's still really difficult. And I think also to teach, to explain it and to make people understand it is one of the hardest things.
It has to be something different now. Oh, I got a list.
Don't worry, I'll limit it to 2. I think two things that I think are difficult. One, what does it mean to have a horse really, truly in front of the leg? And I don't think I really understood it until I was competing at a high level and scoring, in the low 70s consistently. I don't think I really got it until then, because I finally understood what it took to have a horse so with me, and I'm going to say with me, that everything was available in test, which is on demand, under pressure, at a certain time. You know, it's different than just training at home. I think that's a very, very difficult thing for somebody to really understand until they've actually experienced it. And the other thing too is that, like, I kind of lose my mind when people are complaining about their horses not going and this and that, but they're sitting in a way where their horse has absolutely no possibility to move under them at all because they are permanently locked in their hips and their seat, and they're clamping with their knee and their thigh, and they're kicking with a spur in it, and they're pulling at the same time. That like makes me twitch because the horse can't go with you sitting like that. Am I right? So, you know, that's something too where I just have to say, okay, we got to just break this down, and we're going to explain all this to you, but you have to understand it's not just your horse's fault. Like, you do have to ride better.
You stole my idea. But I was going to say, that would probably be the most, frustrating is not even the right word, but maybe people are not aware of, is to have more accountability of your rider biomechanics and understanding how that influences the horse. And then also, it's so easy to complicate things. And like one thing that I'll do often with riders is I say, just stop. Explain it to me like I have no idea what dressage is, and how are you trying to make your horse do a left half pass? Well, he needs to go from here, and I pull, like, if you can't explain it to me in like very basic English terms, you probably can't explain it to him. So I think just slowing ourselves down and making sure that we are being as clear as possible. And sometimes I'll make my students teach each other. If they're having a hard time riding an exercise, I say, okay, today you're teaching that person. And it can be really kind of enlightening to watch them have to work through the words to another human and explain it, and then watch how that can transfer to make it a little easier to explain it to their horse.
Yeah, I agree. I think talking in general and coming back to the basics, it's the understanding for the horse. It's really important. A lot of mistakes happen that maybe, riders think it's always the worst for sure. And we have to question ourselves, is everything set up in the right way? Do I really understand the mental side for my horse, the conformation? Do we really have a partnership? And all that, these questions should be asked first before we think about like fancy exercises. Coming back to food is for sure everything, but it's always like what I find really important is before I can do simple things with my horse, but first of all I need a kind of a good partnership, and I need my horse like listening to easy aids, and that's, I easily would like blaming the horse with having a mistake, but we also always don't have to. Sometimes it's good to make a compromise also in the training and say, I don't need to be the winner today in my training. Tomorrow's another day. And maybe we go just little steps forward with understanding our horse better, but it's really important when we think about technique changes, for example. It can be nice to have one good change in the lines of force, and I can be happy with only one single change in the force and the rest was shit. But then it's like I stop it and say, another approach tomorrow, and I think that's very important. So this question we should always ask ourselves: is there enough partnership, and do we really feel the horse well enough?
Christoph, keep it. I said that was the last one, but I just was handed a question. I'd like to take one part of it, Christoph and Lars specifically. Is there a difference in the instruction of young riders in Europe as opposed to the U.S.?
Yes.
You can say no, and then we'll be done.
I mean, we are talking about the same sport, right? It should not be, all what we said tonight. Okay, I think seeing it where I grew up with going through the levels, we have a lot of trainers taking care of the kids, and I think that's very good, but you guys do too. And I think the training should be always the same, because at the end of the day, we are all working together with an animal, and it should be harmony, and I think we all have the same goal, so I don't think so.
Is there a difference in the instruction of young riders in Europe and in the US?
No, I don't think that is, to be honest with you.
So if I can wrap it up, it kind of all boils down to we as riders need to learn to ride better, and we as trainers need to go back to the basics.
Nailed it.
Is that it?
See, we could have done this in 2 minutes.
I can't tell you, first of all, how thrilled I am with the number of people that are here this evening, and thank you all for coming, and how incredibly lucky are we